Hey, this is Flux with Fluxwithit.com, and I got Glenn Darcy here with Arturia, and we're going to talk about the MatrixBrute, which is basically like the item of Namm. So, Glenn, why don't you tell us a little bit about how this project got started and what it's all about?
Well, it started off with an idea that I had about, first off, we wanted to build an upscale version of the MiniBrute. And my original idea was I wanted to have a patch cord system in it, but I wanted it to be programmable at the same time, so guys using it live could make use of it. So we came up with these kind of crazy ideas that I had about how to do it. And the engineers were like, yeah, that probably won't work. And then one of the engineers found some hardware that could actually deal with the analog signal levels that we needed and make it routable and control the levels within them all. So then the Matrix was born.
Did the Matrix concept, did it stem from things like the Synthy, or was it just happenstance? Like, how did that work?
It was more happenstance based on what the original idea was we wanted to have a jack field where you could plug one cable into another, but then take the cable out, but remember what it used to be for a live setup. And so that just happens to end up working out that doing a modulation matrix is something that you can switch digitally but still pass analog signal.
So it's still passing analog signal path, and it's just a digital routing system, or how does that work?
It's all a digital system, but it does allow for analog voltages, analog DC voltages. So that's why we can pass any of our modulation. We don't pass audio through it, but you can pass any of the modulation sources and destinations through it.
Okay, and this doubles as a step sequencer as well, correct?
Yeah, we have a step sequencer mode in here as well. And so you've got 64 steps. Each step can have an accent. You can slide from one note to another. And then you've got a separate modulation channel. So on each and every one of the steps, you can have a different CV, different than the notes, that you can have controlling whatever thing that you want to patch it into the matrix.
Okay. So I'm basically going to hop around on different things because there's going to be other videos that already have kind of this spiel. What I want to get into is more like some of the modular stuff, but I do want to ask about the 24 dB filters, both the Steiner and the ladder, and how did that come about?
Well, the original Steiner came about because one of our friends of our company, Yves San, said, hey, why don't we do the Steiner Parker? I'm old friends with Niall Steiner. Me and him used to go fishing together on my boat and stuff, so I've known Niall since the 80s. So we brought Niall in, and Niall said, yeah, everybody did the Steiner Parker wrong. I changed some things and nobody didn't. So we got the right Steiner Parker then. But then we started talking about, well, we really like it to be a 24 dB per octave. And then one of our other engineers, Yves, but also our main analog engineer, Bruno, said, oh yeah, we can double it up and we can turn it into a 24 dB per octave. So we made it 24 dB per octave, and we added a drive to the input as well.
Now, have you, did some of that idea of wanting it to be 24 dB, was that from people like doubling up mini brutes and micro brutes and things like that? Because that's something that I do in my own setup a lot, where I'll link the two together just to get that steeper, yeah.
Yeah, no, actually it wasn't. It was just that we wanted to be able to get a little harder bass sounds, get some things where you're really cutting the frequencies a little harder than what the original Steiner could do. So
can you describe the ladder filter for us a little bit?
Yeah, the ladder is a traditional transistor ladder filter, but we split it. You can split it and do a 12 dB per octave. So we made it where it's 12 or 24. We also made it where it's a high pass and band pass mode as well. And then once again, we put in our brute factor, which is basically the feedback. It's kind of a feedback. It goes through a VCA as well, so that the feedback is also VCA controlled based on your envelope amounts. That's the same as it was on the MiniBrute. So it goes through that and then it comes back in. So we've got a brute factor on our ladder filter as well.
And the drive is an input drive on that?
Input drive on that. We have multiple areas of gain staging on this because the oscillators, because you can mix the waveforms and you can drive the levels so hot off of here, and then you can drive them off of the mixer, and then you can drive them off the input. We've got multiple places where, if you're just going with a triangle wave that's pure, you need a lot of gain on it to have the sound be as loud as when you got 5 oscillators worth of sound kicked full max all the way through.
That was one of the things that surprised me, is that the MiniBrute, I always felt probably wouldn't work as a poly so much because you get so much sound out of a single oscillator on that thing. And then when I saw that you were combining different filters and all, I felt that that would work really well. I noticed that you have series and parallel for your filters.
Yeah, we put series and parallel modes in there.
So you can get kind of like that MS-20 vibe where you kind of use a high pass and then boost the resonance to get that really beefy bass and that sort of thing.
Exactly. And that's, we chose the series mode. The series mode is fixed, so it goes through the Steiner first and then the ladder second. And we kind of did that because the Steiner does some cooler things with the notch and the high pass and the band pass. Sounds a little different, and kind of based off of that, the Jupiter 8 and the MS-20 kind of sound of high pass filter before it goes into the low pass. And for the traditional low pass, the ladder filter's got a great sound.
Can you tell me a little bit about the LFO? Is the LFO the same that was in the Mini Brute?
No, they're a little bit different. We have 7 different waveforms. They're totally redesigned from the original ones. A lot of this we had to redesign because of the programmability. So while a lot of the bass circuits are the same, this is really a redesigned product from the ground up. But the LFOs, they've got 7 different waveforms. One of them has a delay time. The other has a phase on it. The VCO3 is kind of interesting because it's a true VCO and an LFO at the same time. So it's not one or the other like on most synths. So it's always got this divide down circuit internally. So you truly, it's another LFO, but you have 4 waveforms and it can track the keybed differently. Now you can make these track the keybed via the modulation matrix if you wanted. You have the rate change up the keyboard. But this one, you just turn the switch for it.
Now, the modulation matrix on here, when you set up multiple modulations, will all that modulation go out of the CV outputs? How does that work?
Yeah, any source here can go to the CV outputs on the back. So if you don't want to go to a destination here and you want to use this as a controller for a modular, you can definitely do that.
Now, will it be a combined modulation output? Meaning if I have multiple modulations on one routing, like, can you combine it out, or is it individual?
I have to remember whether we might have had it where it bypasses it on the output. I forget on the switch whether it's a switching one, if it's going to both the out and the internal destination.
What about the clocking rate on the sequencer? How fast can you make that go? I pulled it up earlier and I think I was at like 260. Yep, yeah, 260.
260 is the clock rate on there. You can sync it to MIDI, USB, and then we have our regular sync in that does the 1 pulse per step, the 2 pulse per quarter note, which is the same as like the Korg Volcas, the 24 DIN sync and the 48 DIN sync. So you can sync it to any of those.
So this thing has a few different voice modes. Can we talk about how the voice modes work?
Yeah. So you have mono mode where all 3 oscillators just play, 1 note at a time. Then we have kind of a paraphonic mode where it's going to split up the oscillators per note. And then we have a duo split mode, which is kind of the most interesting to me. We take the VCO3, put it under control of the sequencer, and then you have the other 2 oscillators that you can play on top of your sequence. And then based on your filter routings, I can send the VCO3 to the ladder filter, send these 2 to the Steiner filter and control them independently.
So when you do that, you're saying VCO3 would be controlled by the sequencer. Is that going to be like band limited to any frequencies, or can you have that go high as well?
No, you can have it, it's a full range VCO, so. Yeah.
The matrix on the back here that we have, what are some of the inputs and outputs that we have available?
They're the same exact inputs and outputs that are labeled right here. So, like if I didn't want to use my LFO3 for some reason, and I've got like like the Maths module or something cool like that, Archangel or something weird, you might have your modular up here, then you could plug into there, you could bypass the whatever, the LFO3 on this thing, and use that as your mod source.
Can you tell us a little bit about the analog effects?
Yeah, the analog effects are true bucket brigade device, analog delay, chorus flanger. We have another one thing called the reverb. It's really more of a reverberator or reverb-ish because it's bucket brigade analog, so it's not it's not a not like a spring reverb or something.
So is that true Bucket Brigade chips in there? Like,
Yeah, definitely.
So how many of those are in there?
It's not that little fake, I forget what it is, the 29.
PT 2399?
2399. Yeah, it's not 2399 for sure.
Okay. Yeah, and we have individual dry and wet mix on that, and then you have a depth amount.
Yeah, you've got the depth, you've got the rate or tone, depth and width control in the stereo delay, and then delay time and regeneration. So yeah,
you can modulate
delay.
those?
Yeah, actually, in the Mod Matrix, you have these last 4 that you can route to any knob on the front panel. So if I wanted to route an LFO to the delay time, I could hold this button, turn that knob, and it will route it and it will show it in the display.
And that's an e-ink display that's on there?
E-ink display, yeah.
What was the decision behind going e-ink on it? I can't say that I've ever seen a synth with an e-ink display.
We're the first. No, we started off with like OLED and LCD options, of course, because that's kind of the one that everybody does. We started to see some of the end-of-life processes with some of those. Some of them have very limited lifespans. Some of them are very difficult to source over a long period of time because they tend to go into life real quickly. You know, they all came from like cell phone markets and things like that. So a lot of them, you know, by the time you start building the product and the time you go to production, that product can go end of life, and then it limits. We've had that happen in other products in the past where a major component went into life right when the thing went into production. So it's like, now we can't source parts for it. So we wanted to find something that we could source for a good long time and not have any problems with it, and the ink people can do that. So.
How does this mod amount wheel, can you explain how that works?
Yeah, so when I'm in a Mod Matrix, if you look, you see a bunch of blue lights and one purple one. The one purple one's the one that's active right now. So when I turn this knob, I can either, you know, I've got envelope 2 going to the VCA. So I can set how much of the envelope 2 is going to the VCA, positive or negative. So, you know, with each one of these routings, there's an attenuator that goes positive or negative for that voltage routing on there. So like instead of just a modular with a patch cord, it's a modular with a patch cord with an inverter with an amount control.
Excellent, excellent. So let's talk about the build quality and the actual keybed and just the control surface down here a little bit.
Okay. The keybed, it's a velocity and aftertouch. It's from a new supplier that we're using that's building this whole product for us. The industrial design was done by our good friend Axel Hartman, who Axel does a lot of our industrial design. He'll take my crummy Illustrator files and turn them into beautiful works of art.
Axel Hartman will be on the Producers Hangout show soon, by the way.
Oh, cool. Axel, a great guy. So yeah, it's all steel chassis. I mean, all this is steel. If you pick it up, you know.
Yeah, we actually came over here and picked it up like right when we got here, because that's like #1 question on everybody's mind is, we've heard about the price point, and you can tell us that in a second, but we wanted to feel it. And can you show us how it lays down?
Yeah. So it lays flat like that. There's a latch on the back here. Find the latch. So it can lock it down so that when you're transporting or have it in a case that the top's not going to come flying off on you.
Now, what about the wood? Is this a real wood? Is it a composite? Can you tell us about that?
No, that's real wood.
Real wood on here.
Real, yeah, it's a real, I think we're using a walnut on it. We looked at a few different types.
Now down here we have a macro section. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the macro knobs are really fun. They're part of a kind of, you know, performance thing. There's a lot of guys who, you know, are using traditionally things like a Voyager or something in live performance. And for the music that I do myself, I like to play it interactively while I'm doing it. So I wanted a macro so that you can route these knobs into the matrix here, and I can have one knob control multiple functions through the modulation matrix. So I can turn one knob and open this filter and close this one and change the pitch. And
so I'm gonna assume that this is digital control over the filter and everything, which would be different from the Mini Brute. Is that correct?
Yeah, this is all digital controls. Actually, all of the knobs have to be programmable. They all have to be read by an A to D, just like you would on a Prophet 5 or Prophet 6 or whatever.
Yeah, and what is the resolution on the knobs?
I don't know the exact resolution. I think we got 12-bit converters on there.
Excellent, excellent. Can you tell me a little bit about the setup here? So we have what is this, a headphone jack on here?
Yeah, you got the headphone jack out front, low and out of your way. You have a separate headphone volume up here. You've got your note priority modes, whether it's legato or non-legato, and then you have a legato glide. You have a low note, high note, last note priorities. You have a key hold mode. You have a glide control and then a glide on-off control.
I'm noticing another interesting thing on here. Along with the mod matrix, it looks like you have hardwired audio modulation between the VCOs.
Oh yeah, the auto mod section's kind of my favorite section here. You can modulate VCO1 to VCO2, it's an FM. You can modulate VCO3 to either VCO1 or VCO2. You can use VCO3 to modulate the VCF cutoffs of 1 or 2, or you can use the noise generator to modulate VCO1 or VCF2. I stole that one from the Prophet 5 because I use that all the time on my Prophet 5. So thank you, Dave Smith.
Excellent. All right, well, what I think we're going to do is we're going to get some direct audio of this bad boy, and we'll check it out. So thank you very much for taking the time.
Noise type, thank you.
Wow.